And to other stories, it has been nearly 3 years since Captain Ibrahim Traoré took on the reins of leadership in Burkina Faso, and there is a speculation in Western media of the type of government that he runs and if it's a democratic one. The charismatic 37-year-old has skillfully built the persona of a Pan-Africanist leader determined to free his nation from what he regards as the clutches of Western imperialism and neo-colonialism.
What if I told you that almost everything you think you know about Burkina Faso is wrong? What if the headlines you've seen, the images plastered across news outlets, and the expert analysis shared on international platforms were all part of a narrative designed to keep you from seeing the truth? Here's the reality. Burkina Faso is not just another struggling African nation. It is a battleground for sovereignty, a testing ground for rebellion against centuries of control, and a living example of what happens when a country decides to defy the global order. This is the real Burkina Faso. And today, we're uncovering 14 shocking truths you never knew. For years, Burkina Faso has been painted with the same brush as many other nations in Africa: poverty, instability, and dependency. But that image has been shattered since the rise of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Under his leadership, this small West African country has undergone a radical transformation that has caught the attention of both its allies and its enemies. The first shocking truth: Burkina Faso is dismantling its dependency on foreign aid and building its economy from the ground up. While Western media often fixates on the narrative of foreign support, the reality on the ground tells a different story. Traoré's administration has redirected state funding toward industries previously left to foreign corporations. Factories producing food, textiles, and even military equipment are now in full swing. In a nation where foreign companies once controlled nearly every profitable sector, this shift is revolutionary. This isn't just economic policy, it's a declaration of independence. Instead of begging for scraps from IMF loan packages, Burkina Faso is tapping into its own abundant natural resources, starting with its gold reserves. For decades, gold mining profits flowed almost exclusively out of the country, enriching foreign investors while leaving locals with nothing. But now, Traoré's government has taken bold steps to reclaim these mines, demanding a larger share of profits stay in Burkina Faso. This is funding roads, schools, and healthcare projects that once depended on foreign donors. And that brings us to the second shocking truth. Burkina Faso is openly rejecting neo-colonial financial systems. This is where things get even more explosive. By pulling away from the CFA franc, a currency controlled by France and widely criticized as a relic of colonial domination, Burkina Faso has joined forces with Mali and Niger in the newly formed Alliance of Sahel States, AES. Together, they're laying the groundwork for a new independent currency. If successful, this would strike at the heart of France's influence in West Africa, dismantling a system that has kept nations economically tethered for over 70 years. Now, let's talk about security. For decades, Burkina Faso was crippled by insurgencies in its northern regions. Many saw these conflicts as proof that the nation couldn't govern itself. But here's the third shocking truth. Burkina Faso is modernizing its military faster than anyone expected, without Western oversight. With support from regional allies and partnerships with countries like Russia, Burkina Faso is producing its own weapons, vehicles, and even drones. This isn't just about defending borders, it's about rewriting the rules of sovereignty in Africa. Imagine a nation that refuses foreign military bases, refuses peacekeeping missions that answer to outsiders, and instead builds an independent defense force tailored to its own needs. That's exactly what Burkina Faso is doing. For Western powers, this is deeply unsettling. Control in Africa has often been maintained through military leverage, foreign bases, training missions, and security deals that kept local armies dependent. By breaking this pattern, Burkina Faso is sending a message not just to its neighbors, but to the entire world. We will not be controlled. And here's the fourth truth, one that hits at the heart of why this story matters far beyond Africa. Burkina Faso is challenging the legitimacy of ECOWAS itself. Once seen as the backbone of West African cooperation, ECOWAS has become a controversial player. Its sanctions on Burkina Faso following the coup that brought Traoré to power backfired spectacularly, Instead of isolating the country, those sanctions pushed it closer to Mali and Niger, cementing a new alliance that has openly defied ECOWAS and its foreign backers. This is unprecedented. 3 nations, representing a combined population of over 70 million, are now openly questioning the future of ECOWAS. They are pushing a vision of Pan-African solidarity, one that prioritizes local sovereignty over regional organizations that many see as tools of foreign influence. Think about the implications. If Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger succeed in creating a self-sufficient bloc with its own security and economic framework, ECOWAS could lose its grip entirely. Other nations, disillusioned with broken promises and heavy-handed policies, may follow. But none of this comes without cost. Here's the 5th shocking truth. Burkina Faso is under economic siege. International sanctions have disrupted imports, blocked access to international banking systems, and isolated the country from global markets. For many nations, this would spell disaster. But here's where Burkina Faso's story takes an unexpected turn. Rather than collapse, it's adapting. Local markets are thriving with barter systems. Mobile money and gold-backed trade are emerging as workarounds to bypass Western-controlled financial networks. Deals are being struck directly with nations willing to trade outside of US dollar systems. It's rough, yes, but it's also forcing the country to innovate in ways that challenge the global status quo. And then comes the 6th truth. Burkina Faso's revolution isn't just political, it's cultural. Walk through the streets of Ouagadougou today and you'll feel it. Music, art, and festivals celebrating Pan-African pride are everywhere. Schools are revising curriculums to teach pre-colonial history and African heroes long erased from textbooks. Citizens are reclaiming their identity, not as subjects of foreign powers, but as architects of their own destiny. This cultural awakening is not just symbolic. It strengthens the political movement by reminding citizens of their shared heritage, their collective strength, and their right to chart their own future. It's no wonder Western media largely avoids this angle, because cultural unity has always been the biggest threat to foreign control. But we're only halfway through this story, because here's the 7th truth. Burkina Faso's transformation is inspiring a chain reaction. Across West Africa, ordinary citizens in countries like Senegal, Guinea, and even Nigeria are watching closely. Social media is flooded with videos praising Traore, calling him the liberator of the Sahel, and demanding similar reforms in their own nations. This isn't just one country breaking ranks, it's the spark of something larger. And if history has taught us anything, it's that revolutions don't stay contained. We'll explore how Burkina Faso's people, the farmers, youth, and everyday workers, are driving this movement from the ground up. We'll look at how grassroots efforts are reshaping the economy, what secret trade deals are keeping the country alive despite sanctions, and why global powers are suddenly scrambling to respond. But before we continue, I want to hear from you. Is Burkina Faso writing the first chapter of Africa's independence from foreign dominance, or is it standing alone in an impossible fight? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more hard-hitting analysis like this, and share this video with someone who needs to see the truth behind the headlines. Because this is only the beginning, and what comes next could change Africa forever.
Burkina Faso has recently undergone a bold agricultural revolution under the visionary leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. The country has launched an intensive sustainable agricultural training program for nearly 2,000 young people, designed to set the country apart from other West African countries, which was launched on March 4th, 2025. The transformative initiative kicks off the Presidential Initiative for Agricultural Production and Food Self-Sufficiency, aiming to transform the nation's food security and empower its youth. It's evidenced by every incoming project that Burkina Faso is taking all the necessary steps to make themselves self-sufficient. Ibrahim Traoré plans to scale this project of 2,000 trainees to 8,000 trainees across the country. Traoré's strategy is not just about feeding Burkina Faso, it's about cultivating a new generation of skilled farmers to lead the charge towards self-reliance.
In the first part of this video, we showed us the bold moves of Burkina Faso's leadership. This part reveals an even more powerful truth. This revolution is not just driven by the government, it is powered by ordinary citizens who refuse to wait for change. Walk through the streets of Ouagadougou or visit the rural villages of Kaya, and you'll see it everywhere. Grassroots movements are reshaping the nation. This is the 8th shocking truth about Burkina Faso. Its people have turned hardship into fuel for transformation, farmers taking back the land. For decades, Burkinabe farmers were trapped in a cycle of dependency. They relied on imported seeds, overpriced fertilizers, and foreign aid programs that dictated what they could grow. Today, that story is changing. Across the countryside, farming cooperatives are reviving traditional techniques, cultivating indigenous crops resilient to drought, and sharing resources in ways that sidestep middlemen entirely. One farmer I spoke to put it plainly: before, we farmed for survival. Now, we farm for freedom. This shift isn't just philosophical. Burkina Faso is rapidly reducing food imports, and markets in urban centers are now filled with homegrown produce. By leaning into local knowledge and rejecting exploitative agricultural contracts, the nation is building food sovereignty, an achievement many wealthier nations still struggle with. This is the ninth shocking truth. Burkina Faso is proving that sustainable local farming can thrive without multinational corporations dictating the terms, and the ripple effect is massive. Neighboring countries are sending delegations to study these methods, hoping to replicate them. Youth power and innovation. If the farmers are reclaiming the land, it's the youth who are electrifying the future. Over 65% of Burkina Faso's population is under 25, a demographic once dismissed as restless and unemployed. Now, they are the driving force of the revolution. Social media platforms are buzzing with invention. Young engineers showcasing homemade drones for surveillance, coders developing payment apps that bypass traditional banks, and innovators designing solar-powered gadgets to electrify rural communities. This is our 10th shocking truth. Burkina Faso's youth are not waiting for government programs. They are creating solutions themselves. Through informal networks and community workshops, these young minds are reimagining technology not as a luxury, but as a survival tool in the face of sanctions and global isolation. One striking example comes from a small group of university students in Bobo Dioulasso, who developed low-cost solar irrigation pumps using scrap metal and old car batteries. Their invention is now spreading across villages, transforming arid plots into thriving farmlands. Proof that necessity breeds innovation, surviving sanctions through ingenuity. But let's be clear, this revolution is not without struggle. Burkina Faso has been cut off from many global systems since ECOWAS imposed sanctions and foreign powers scaled back their ties. Yet here's the 11th shocking truth. Instead of collapsing, the Burkinabe economy is evolving in ways the West never predicted. Markets that once depended on imported goods are now thriving with barter exchanges and community-backed trade. Local artisans, once sidelined by mass imports, are booming again as "Made in Burkina" becomes a badge of pride. Mobile money platforms, some tied to agricultural commodities like millet and maize, are replacing bank-dependent transactions blocked by sanctions. And then there's the rise of gold-backed trade. With global financial systems largely closed to them, Burkina Faso has turned to its gold reserves as leverage in bilateral deals. Fuel shipments from Algeria and grain imports from Russia are increasingly negotiated outside of US dollar frameworks, signaling a bold rejection of Western-controlled trade norms. The role of the AES, secret deals and strategic alliances. The 12th shocking truth lies in Burkina Faso's new diplomatic playbook. Through its alliance of Sahel states, AES partnership with Mali and Niger, it's quietly forging a parallel economic and security network. AES leaders have signed secretive trade deals with nations like Russia, Turkey, and Iran, bypassing sanctions entirely. Russian grain shipments now feed AES markets, while Turkish infrastructure firms are quietly building roads and energy grids. These moves infuriate Western powers, but for AES nations, they're survival lifelines that point to an undeniable reality. Africa can and will find alternatives when cornered. The most controversial example? AES's reported talks with Russia to establish a joint gold-backed payment system exclusive to the bloc. If realized, it would directly challenge the dominance of the CFA franc and even threaten ECOWAS's cohesion. Culture as resistance beyond economics and politics. Burkina Faso's cultural awakening is fueling this movement in ways that numbers alone can't explain. Here's the 13th shocking truth. The revolution is also a cultural renaissance. In Ouagadougou, murals of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader assassinated decades ago, now adorn public walls. Schools are revamping curriculums to teach African history suppressed under colonial influence. National holidays once overshadowed by foreign observances are being reclaimed as symbols of pride and defiance. Music festivals now echo with anti-colonial lyrics. Fashion shows feature locally woven fabrics once dismissed as outdated. Even cuisine is taking center stage, with restaurants replacing imported ingredients with local staples. This isn't mere nostalgia, it's a deliberate strategy to remind Burkinabe citizens and the wider African diaspora that reclaiming identity is inseparable from reclaiming power. The spark spreads across Africa. Finally, the 14th shocking truth. Burkina Faso's revolution is contagious. Across Africa, videos praising Traore's leadership rack up millions of views. Protesters in Senegal and Guinea wave AES flags during rallies. In Nigeria, youth activists are calling for policies modeled on Burkina Faso's defiance of ECOWAS in the West. For years, African leaders who challenged the status quo were isolated and overthrown. Now, with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger forming a united front, that isolation is crumbling. The AES experiment is offering a blueprint, and its success or failure could redefine Africa's future for generations. We'll explore how these developments are shaking global powers to their core. France's dwindling influence and the silent chess moves of Russia, China, and Turkey in the region. Most importantly, we'll tackle the question the world is afraid to ask. Is Burkina Faso the beginning of Africa's liberation, or is it on a collision course with forces too big to resist?
After decades of military boots on African soil, the tricolour of France has finally been lowered in Senegal. France, once the unquestioned colonial ruler in West Africa, has now been pushed out, base after base, nation after nation. The last two French military outposts in Senegal have now been formally returned to the control of Dakar. Marking the end of the 65-year deployment, these are the images of the handover ceremony in Senegal's capital, Dakar.
If you thought Burkina Faso's transformation was only a domestic story, think again. What's happening here has sent tremors far beyond West Africa's borders, rattling capitals from Paris to Washington, Moscow to Beijing. The world is watching, and for some, trembling. Here's the 15th shocking truth. Burkina Faso has become ground zero for a geopolitical power struggle that could redefine Africa's relationship with the world. Let's start with France, the former colonial power that once called the shots in Burkina Faso. For decades, Paris maintained its influence through military bases, mining concessions, and the CFA franc currency system. But under Traore, that grip has all but shattered. In 2023, Burkina Faso expelled French troops. By 2024, contracts with French mining firms were torn up or renegotiated on national terms. And in 2025, the unthinkable happened. Burkina Faso publicly declared its intention to abandon the CFA franc, severing one of France's last levers of control. The fallout? France is hemorrhaging influence not just in Burkina Faso, but across the Sahel. Mali and Niger followed similar paths, booting out French forces and nationalizing key industries. AES flags now fly where French tricolors once stood. French media frames these events as instability, but on the streets of Ouagadougou, they're celebrated as liberation. Murals reading "Down with Neocolonialism" now cover walls where French consulates once stood. For many Burkinabe, this isn't just politics. It's payback for over a century of exploitation. While the West scrambles, Moscow and Beijing are moving fast. Russia's play is straightforward. Offer military support in exchange for strategic access. Its private military contractors have reportedly helped secure AES territories against insurgencies, while Kremlin-linked companies are exploring joint ventures in gold mining and energy. China, meanwhile, is playing a longer game. Through infrastructure deals, telecom projects, and low-interest loans, Beijing is embedding itself into Burkina Faso's development model. Roads linking Ouagadougou to Mali's border, built by Chinese firms, new industrial zones in Bobo Dioulasso, funded through Beijing-backed investments. This is the 16th shocking truth. Burkina Faso is no longer a pawn. It's becoming a pivot point in a multipolar chessboard where Africa is no longer peripheral but central. Here's the 17th and final shocking truth. Burkina Faso is forcing Africa, and the world, to confront a question it has long avoided. What happens when an African nation truly breaks free? If AES's experiment succeeds, it will send a powerful signal to 1.4 billion Africans that sovereignty is not just a dream, but an achievable reality. Other nations, from Senegal to Congo to Ghana, may follow suit, forge new alliances, and reject old dependencies. But make no mistake, this path is fraught with danger. Insurgent threats persist in Burkina Faso's north. Sanctions continue to squeeze its economy. And whispers of covert destabilization campaigns, sabotage, disinformation, even assassination plots are growing louder. Yet despite it all, the Burkinabe spirit remains unbroken. In the words of a young student activist in Ouagadougou, "We know the risks, but for the first time in our lives, we feel like this country belongs to us." The world is witnessing something extraordinary, the rebirth of a nation long written off as a footnote in global affairs. Burkina Faso's fight is not just its own, it's Africa's fight. And as this small, determined country stares down superpowers and defies the odds, one thing is clear: the age of quiet compliance is over. So here is the question: is Burkina Faso blazing a trail that will liberate Africa, or is it daring to challenge forces too powerful to resist? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe now.